lost as they deal with the one that has failed. On the other hand, Xianu goes to the Pado Guild, and their leader wants to meet the one who requested the person, so they call him to the main palace. He wonders why Mr. Wu would have been the one who made contact, and maybe it really was risky to try and make a deal with the Pado Guild, the arch-nemesis of the Ares Guild. But if this means he can get rid of Hyonu, he can do anything for this. He enters the building, and the guard asks him to come in because he has been permitted to enter, while he smiles thinking it is all over for Hyonu now. The guards take him to a door and ask him to enter there, and he thinks this is the residence of the Mighty Ruler Guild's great leader, also known as the Supreme Dragon. He enters there and is shocked to see that the leader of the infamous Mighty Ruler Guild is a young girl. However, he bows before her and says it is an honor to meet her. He introduces himself as the head of the Korean branch, Xianu Hyuk. She asks him if he has come there to request their guild to have someone killed, and asks him about the name of this individual. Xianu suddenly gets the feeling that he shouldn't reveal his name, but after what's happened, he is so good as dead and thinks there's no turning back. He then starts talking and says he is not sure if he has heard of him before, but he is the hunter who defeated the divine spectral queen in Germany, Hyunwoo Kim. If she is able to rid them of this man, then the Ares Korea branch will hand over 20% of its dungeons to the Mighty Ruler Guild, along with a payment of 80 billion won. She asks him if he really makes a request to kill Hyunwoo Kim, and if he really wants to go out and kill her dear teacher. She gets up and pushes him back with great force, making him fall to a distance, and he is shocked at what she is doing. He came there simply to ask her to deal with Hyunwoo for them, so why is the leader of the Mighty Ruler Guild reacting this way? He suddenly remembers that she just said Hyunwoo is her teacher and asks her to wait a moment because there must be a misunderstanding. He again asks her if she just referred to him as her teacher and where she first met him. She states that she met him inside the tower, and he thinks he doesn't know why the Supreme Dragon believes that Hyunwoo is her teacher, but he can use this to save his skin. He then starts a conversation with her and asks her if she is Korean, and she says no. He claims it is unlikely that Hyunwoo is the teacher she is looking for. She asks him why he thinks that, and he replies she may already know that there are currently 158 towers worldwide, and each tower is supervised by its respective territories. The tower in Korea only summons Korean people, and the 15 towers in the USA each summon people from different regions of the states. So there is no way that someone like her, who is in China, could have encountered Hyunwoo Kim, someone who was trapped inside the tower in Korea for 12 years. But she slaps him again and asks who permitted him to pass out. She wanted to see the insect that tried to murder his teacher struggle in pain, and he still dares to speak those words that she has mistaken her teacher for someone else. She then grabs him by his collar and says she understands his confusion that the towers oversee different areas, but unfortunately for him, she in fact cleared the tutorial tower in Korea. She was outraged back then because she had to follow her foolish father to Korea, where she was then dragged into the tower. But it's all fine now because she met her teacher. Xianu says there is still a chance that the person she met in the tower wasn't Hyunwoo, but she says he insists on continuing to doubt her teacher, and one thing he should know is, to her, that is the same as something doubting her. Everything that she is right now is built on the foundation of his teacher's wishes, and her formal kippao dress, her long hair that meets her waist, his trademark symbol on her back, and even her name, Myeong, is all her teacher's blessing. She warns him not to think for a second thought, and his death will be quick. His crime is that he tried to murder her teacher, and doubted him and tried her to save himself. She will teach him the seriousness of the sins he has committed. Meanwhile, Hyunwoo goes to Av's room and asks her if she likes the TV, and if it's better than staring into blank space sitting at her table. She really likes it and says she didn't really understand it at first, but she found it has so many fun things to watch, and she can even watch the dramas she likes by pressing a button. She asks him if he can do something else for her, and asks her to make a PlayStation for her because she saw it on TV, and it looked entertaining, and she really wants to try it for herself. Hyunwoo asks if she can't just make something like that herself, and she replies that the sole purpose of her existence is to be a management system for the Guardian, and she doesn't have access to make these things. As Hyunwoo presses the button and makes a PlayStation for her, she becomes very happy to see this and thanks him. Hyunwoo thinks he is getting this sense that he has now become a dad even though he is not married yet. Suddenly, she remembers something and says there is something she needs to tell him, and there is a chance that she is wrong, but she is telling him just in case. She then tells him something, and after some time, he is still in shock and is thinking about something. Soyeok calls him and asks why he is not eating and why he is spacing out like that, and he replies there is nothing wrong with him. He remembers what Av told him, and she revealed that there is a chance that climbers exist in the 9th layer where he resides. However, this is just an assumption, so she is not sure 100%. Hyonu asked her what made her think that, and she revealed that there were 3 rifts before he escaped the tower. Normally, once the boss is killed, the rift should disappear, but 2 of the 3 rifts never close up, and she can't say for sure, but it's a good reason to be cautious. Meanwhile, Seok asks him when he is going to Germany, and he also wants to accompany him. But Hyonu says he will not do any sightseeing and is coming straight back home, and they exclaim they want to go with him and have some fun. Hyonu asks how they can go sightseeing when the whole city is in ruin, but Seoyin says the damage won't take too long to repair thanks to mage hunters. If there are mages that can use magic circles, then the city can be restored very quickly. For example, 10 years of work can be reduced to about a year. That's why, even if monsters appear or a rift occurs, no cities have been completely turned into wastelands. Hyonu says there's still no reason for them to only go to Germany and many other places. Seoyin reveals that the day after he receives his rewards, the auction house will open, and Seoyeok says he will summarize the auction house. He reveals that an auction house hosted by the International Hunters Association will open in Germany. Even though Leipzig was destroyed, there won't be any major changes. Hyonu is going to use teleportation to attend the auction house and then will come back without even having to get on a plane. Seok asks him to go and check the auction because the International Hunters Association only handles carefully selected items, so he is sure that he will see something interesting. Hyonu thinks based on what he has read when rifts didn't close up, that the association simply attributed it to their high rank. But if Av's assumption is correct, 2 climbers currently remain in hiding in the 9th layer. He can't use the status scan skill on climbers, so he might be able to find them by checking every single person. But it would be a huge hassle. Besides, he has something else to do and must become stronger before that. He has definitely become more powerful after his 2 fights, but those were mid-rank climbers, and he wonders what will happen if a high-rank climber appears. He uttered that he needed to be prepared, and Soyeon asked him why he needed to be prepared because she didn't think he would be excited about the auction. 3 days later, they reached the International Hunters Association auction in Germany, and it is going to start. On the other hand, at the Ares Guild headquarters, Ching is burning the documents related to the transfer of dungeon ownership and items of self-ruling rights. He thinks Seonu received a call from the Mighty Ruler Guild at around 1 p.m. and left for his meeting with the leader. But the fact that he still hasn't returned can only mean one thing, and he is sure that something bad has happened to Seonu, and it seems the Mighty Ruler Guild has lived up to their name. He thinks it would be wise for him to leave as soon as possible, and he has destroyed the evidence. So all that is left for him to do is to go into hiding with his savings. The head office is only interested in Seonu anyway, and he is just his right-hand man, and he doubts they will want this. He is about to open the door when someone attacks him from behind, slashes his hand, and apologizes to him because he tried to kill him in one go. But it looks like he missed. Ching is shocked to see numerals on his face, and the boy guesses he has recognized them. They have murdered hunters belonging to the head office called the Order, and they are composed of elite members who were previously graded at rank 40 or above. He asks why the Order is there, and he replies that he should have known why they were there. Ching tries to run away, but he moves with too much speed and slashes his head in just one blow. After that, his other companion enters the room, asks him if he got him already, and asks him to move to their next target. He asks him if he has dealt with Seonu, and the other replies the Mighty Ruler Guild is currently holding him. After he entered the palace, he felt an incredible amount of magic emanating from the site, and he was likely already dead. They think even if it turns out he is still alive, they can just deal with him. One asks if they should go and get the guild leader who received the transfer, and he replies that the task was given to 4, 7, 9, and 10. He is surprised at 4 of them just to fight one guy, but then he remembers he is the guy who stopped the rift, and then it makes sense to him. 8 continues on saying regardless of how strong he is, they have the artifact from the guild leader and are about to tell him rank. But 5 glares at him and asks him to watch his mouth because the unofficial rankings are top secret. He then says their business there is finished now, and the others are probably beginning their hunt right about now. On the other hand, Hyonu and his friends are at the auction in Germany while he is just sleeping there. Seok asks him if he will ever wear anything other than that sportswear, and he wonders why everyone asks him about this. Suyok also says his dress is fine if he is at home, but he feels a bit bad about wearing it in a formal setting. Hyonu asks them to stop complaining because he is not like he struts around nude. and says he wore this at the awards ceremony yesterday but didn't see any articles talking about his appearance. Soyeon is watching the list of the artifacts and says there aren't any S+ items there, and he is surprised at this name. He thinks the one in his pocket is S+, which is Divine Spectral Queen Essence, and received this item at the awards ceremony dropped from Gwill. But despite its high rank, it has no customization options or skills, and he thinks it will not sell for much, and it's too small to use as a weapon too. He is getting annoyed that the status scan is full of gaps again, and then he decides to look at the items in the auction. The auction starts and the first thing is sold to participant 32 for 1 billion won, while he is getting bores. Reading the item description keeps him awake, and after that, the next submitted item is a Slan's Lance, and the starting price is 300 million won. He reads its description, an artifact of rank S, and its skills are smiting, swift, change, and shadow. But there is limited information that annoys him, so he decides to leave the auction room. Soyeok calls him and asks where he is going, and he says he is going outside for a bit. He asks him to give him a call when the auction finishes. He then comes outside, and as soon as he walks through the parking, someone appears behind and attacks the guard. As Hyunwoo moves swiftly and blocks the attack with his punch, the murderer then slams the ground and emits so much pressure that he falls to the ground at a distance. He wonders what kind of people this time he is facing, and one of them asks him if he is Hyunwoo Kim, and they, who stand before him, are 4 members of the order sent to end his life. Each one of them is an elite fighter with a worldwide S-grade rank 30, but before she completes her sentence, Hyunwoo throws something in her face. Hyunwoo exclaims it's obvious what is going to happen, and they will fail miserably and get crushed, and he will show them soon. They get scared to see him, and after that, there is a lot of fighting noise. On the other side, the founder is informed that number 5 wasn't able to kill Hyunwoo, and he says he never wants to have to clean up after his mistakes. He then inquires about Hyunwoo, and the man informs him that they should have started the assault, or are engaged in combat with him. The assistant asks him if this will be enough because their target is a hunter who managed to stop the rift on 2 occasions. The founder counter-questions him if he is questioning the order's ability, and asks which members of the order were dispatched to deal with Hyunwoo. He informs him that they are numbers 4, 7, 9, and 10, and he thinks that should be fine. He never thought for 1 second that just 4 members from the order could take care of Hyunwoo, and what he is trying right now is like an experiment. He wants to see how effective his artifacts are against him. Meanwhile, Hyunwoo defeats all of them, picks up one of the artifacts, and is shocked to see it, while the founder exclaims he wants to check on him. At the same time, the Lord behind the earth asks his subordinate about the current situation, and he informs him that 2 of their climbers have been defeated. He asks him which climbers went to the 9th layer, and he replies that they were Chinman, the leader of the Wild Hunt. He laughs and says the 9th layer would succumb to them quite easily, but it looks like he was wrong. He asks him who the next climber in line is. The subordinate says it has not been decided yet, and he exclaims it seems they have met a foe beyond his expectations, and he is excited to see what happens next. The next day, Hyunwoo brings a huge bag with him, and they ask him about these, and he replies that they are his spoils. They say they were shocked yesterday because, after the auction, they found him standing next to a bunch of corpses. They are glad that the incident was recorded on CCTV, and Soyeok asks him if he can find out who they were. He replies they all silenced themselves so that he couldn't interrogate them, and he thinks they used magic to tamper with CCTV. Soyeok asks him why he smashed their heads open, and Hyunwoo brags it is hard for him to hold back once he starts fighting. But they both know that he did this so that their identities couldn't be checked, and Soyeok says from the footage, it seemed like he just wanted them dead. He thinks he was caught off guard by how coordinated they were, and thankfully, he just experimented with a bunch of stuff and finished them off quickly. However, they conceal their faces in public and tamper with recordings using magic, and he doubts they would find anything, even if they searched for their records. Hyunwoo asks him where he is going, and he replies that he wants to buy some souvenirs before they go back. When he is left, he takes out the bag. He starts searching the artifacts he obtained the previous day and checks their status scan. The first thing is Bjornis's Morning Spear of grade S+, and the notification appears there saying the status scan has unlocked the item's hidden description. The next one is Faker F173 of grade S+, and has skills maximum boost. And all their artifacts seem to have names like Faker F199, etc. They don't seem like artifacts from a labyrinth and have weird names and descriptions. He wonders if they could have been created artificially, but he can't see any information about how they were made. He thinks about the suspicious guys from yesterday, and they are the strongest hunters he has faced so far. They knew where he would be and ambushed him with a premeditated attack. Then there can be only two possible explanations. They are either associated with Ares, or they are mercenaries. But the Ares guild isn't the only one that seems to have an issue with him, so there's no need to overthink who the culprit could be. If he puts everything aside, he still doesn't understand the mysterious artifacts and thinks knowing all this would not change anything for him. The truth behind these artifacts isn't essential right now, and his main priority is to find out who sent those guys after him. He thinks Seonu hasn't learned his lesson after getting smacked by the hammer of justice, and he won't let him off lightly this time. After coming to Korea, he reaches his office and asks Mr. Kang where he is, and he reveals that the branch manager is currently on a business trip. Hyonu picks up a stone of justice and asks him again where he is, and Mr. Kang gets scared of him and says he will tell him and begs before him, saying the branch manager didn't inform them of his destination and he has been absent for 4 days. Hyonu again asks him where exactly he is and tells him that he went to China 4 days ago. Hyonu is shocked when he tells him that he went to meet the leader of the Pado Guild the same night at Seyon's house, and he asks Soyok if he knows anything about the Pado Guild. He replies that the Pado Guild has apparently gained control over almost all the dungeons in China, and Haeni says last time he told her they only had around 50%. He reveals that in China, everything is resolved through brute force. In other words, it's the survival of the fittest. At first, China's dungeons were all owned by the state, and dungeon transfer procedures were more complicated. But around 3 to 4 years ago, the laws suddenly changed. There are rumors that the person who spearheaded these changes to the laws is the leader of the Pado Guild. The timing was perfect, and as soon as the laws changed, the Pado Guild was on the scene and began its expansion. Hyonu says the Pado Guild leader must have been a powerful figure in China. He wonders if he ever talked to her about the outside world, and he remembers when she asked him if he even knew who she was to block. He asked her to bow before him and took her as his student from that day onward, while she wanted to climb up with those guys to survive quickly. But he didn't listen to her and took her to monsters, but she was so scared of them, and he told her that she was his only special student and she would never die. When he ended up with his training, he asked her to go back, but she wanted to stay, saying she needed to learn many things from him. But he exclaimed she had nothing left to learn, and said she was no longer the weak child she once was. He advised her never to allow another person to force her to do something she didn't want, and told her the only thing above her was the sky. At present, he thinks it sounds like cringy nonsense, but she did say something then, and it was definitely something commendable. He thinks he was lazy and didn't pay full attention, and that's probably why he can't remember what she said. Soyok tells him there is also a rumor that it's a bit of a strange guild, and apparently it operates like an empire. Hyonu gets up and says he is going, and on being inquired, he states that he is going to China, and more precisely, he is going to Beijing. On the other side, at the Pado Guild Palace in Beijing, China, Muryoung is lying on her bed and thinks she can remember so very clearly even after 4 years. She wonders how the tower became a turning point in her life, and it was the first time she realized that money doesn't solve everything. She then understood the true extent of her weakness during that break time. Her father came from a world of business and finance, and his kindness was in the form of money, and she spent her life obeying him like a lifeless object. Her teacher taught him what affection was. Unlike her creepy father who didn't even see her as his daughter, he taught her how to stand up to the world. She thinks she will meet him soon, and there aren't any groups left that oppose the Pado Guild, and soon she can go and bring her teacher there. On the other side, 8 and 5 received a message from the founder, and he asked them to kill Hyonu since 4, 7, 9, and 10. 8 exclaims he wants them to stop someone who took out 4 of them, while 5 looks pretty calm. He says he is worried too, but it's not like they don't have any options, and asks him to first deal with Seonu. This means they can stay in Beijing until they have killed Seonu, but they still wonder why he told them to stop Hyonu. 5 thinks it's strange because he could have sent numbers 1 to 3 from the start. It is revealed that Ares has 10 numbers and the numbers are given in order of strength, but it's not as if the lower numbers are weaklings. On the contrary, their fighting power is increased due to the artifacts, but they are still shocked that he manages to kill 4 numbers by himself. Number 5 says they should avoid him, but suddenly they feel the earth is vibrating and think it is an earthquake. Suddenly, someone appears there, attacking number 5 and making him fall. Number 8 tries to respond to him, but he dodges his attack and asks him if he is the one who killed Chin Yong. Number 8 asks him about who he is, but he uses a technique and attacks him with his weird technique. He then grabs him by his head and asks him not to hate him too much. He exclaims that he snatched away their guild leader's prey, so he had no choice but to capture him instead. The next day, at the Airing Guild basement, second floor training room, Suoyong says he doesn't have to go if he doesn't want to and thinks he has to go there. Everyone has a dark past, and his parents passed away when he was 10 years old. So, he was too busy trying to make a living even to have a dark past, so it all came out inside the tower. It wouldn't bother him if no one found out about it, but one of his old students is spreading his embarrassing act throughout China. However, he should stop thinking about it. He just needs to beat Xianu and return. Meanwhile, Suoyin calls him and says it is illegal to use a magic circle for transportation, and it was fine when he went to Germany because it was an emergency. Hyonu exclaims it will be okay because he will not stay there long term, and is only going to teach Xianu a lesson and come back. But before she can say anything, he uses the magic and leaves. She thinks Hyonu has managed to handle himself up until now, but she feels he will bite off more than he can chew this time. Meanwhile, she is surprised to see Anya's condition, so she pulls an all-nighter because Hyonu suddenly wants to visit the Pado Guild. On the other side, Hyonu lands at the entrance of the Pado Guild Palace, outskirts of Beijing, and he is shocked to see a signboard with a title that the sky is the only thing above them. He grabs his head because he was the one who told her all this, and that aside from this, it is forbidden for anything else to be above him. Meanwhile, the guards appear in front of him and ask about his identity, but he jumps in front of them and reaches the roof. He thinks first he needs to destroy all these awful things and use the dark cloud strike technique to remove the signboard. He then rushes toward the guards, and he recognizes that they are definitely wearing his mask. They attack him, and he observes that they are using his moves but don't know how to use them properly. He knows the whole thing was an act, but the martial arts were authentic, and his student was the one who taught them. He then uses his martial art technique and reaches them in no time, and uses the technique of the Emperor's right of denial. He made sure to hold himself back so that they wouldn't die from this. Meanwhile, Muryoung reaches there and calls him from behind the teacher. She thinks her instincts don't lie, and he must be her teacher with that fighting style, skill, and stance. But above all, that assured look in his eyes, and she asks him if he is her teacher, and he replies it has been a while. His dear student. She is very happy to see him and thinks she did everything possible to secure a place for her teacher. She created a guild and made changes to the law and their people. The title she earned during that time meant nothing to her, and everything she did was for her teacher. She bows before him and says this unworthy student has been awaiting his return for a long time. She counts the days as 1,532 days and 2 hours, and everyone including her bows before him to pay their respect. Guild leader of China's largest guild, mighty ruler dubbed the Supreme Dragon, global rank 5, finally offers her welcome bow to her teacher. After that, she takes him to the throne she prepared for him, and Hyonu is shocked that she wants him to sit there. She asks him if he doesn't like this, and she will execute those who built it. He asks her to stop talking nonsense and stay right there, and he wonders how much money she spent on all this. He is still confused as to why she is doing this and thinks this isn't his style. But he is scared to say anything to her, and he wonders why she is doing this since he is pretty sure they have a good student-teacher relationship. He saved her in the tower and taught her how to use martial arts, but it seems like he is living in a web novel. The training he gave her was extremely harsh, so he didn't look for her after leaving the tower. He calls her, but at the same time, he is embarrassed to say anything, while she seems very happy and is sitting on the ground. He wonders what he should do, why she reversed him after he was so horrible to her, and thinks he should stop her from spreading his embarrassing past around the world. He uses the technique of status scan to see her status, and he is surprised that all her attributes are S+. He calls her student and says there are many things he wants to talk about, but there is something he needs to do first. He asks her if there is a guy named Xianu there, and she takes him to Xianu where he is in a miserable condition and is begging for life. She tells him that she taught him a lesson since he was arrogant enough to try to kill him, and Hyonu appears to be apologizing for this. He then kicks his head, and Xianu is shocked to see him there. He begs him to save his life, admits that he was wrong all the time, and tells him that his student lost it completely. Muryoung glares at him furiously and makes him scared, but when Hyonu turns back to see, she looks normal. He then says he will spare his life if he answers his questions properly, and he will keep him alive in some form. On the other side, at the underground bunker, outskirts of New York, number 1 states that they still have more work, but they have already done so much. The founder assures them to give them an SST plus artifact if they successfully complete this one job. He calls number 1 and says he was ranked 6 before, but after this mission, he would reach the very top. Number 2 asks if this can be possible because an SST plus artifact can raise his stats by 2 levels. It is stated that trying to raise stats is like trying to reach the stars, and this is why thousands of hunters search labyrinths for artifacts. The founder asks them if they think he is lying, and says SST plus items have never been seen before. At the same time, at the Korea Goguryeo Guild head office, Suoyeok asks Seok when they are going to explore the labyrinth again, and he replies that he wants to give it some thought as he got some decent artifacts last time. Suoyeok asks him what he is doing because he didn't sell any of the artifacts he got the other day, and he replies he feels like he will need to increase his stats soon. Seok says things have been pretty static, so they keep being pushed down the rankings, even though they were the first to escape the tower. However, their focus is on managing their guild now, but after spending time around Hyonu, they are starting to feel like losers. Meanwhile, at the Mighty Ruler Guild, they caught numbers 5 and 8 and found out that Seonu wasn't the one who sent those guys, but the Aries guild leader. Hyonu asks her if she is sure that they are still alive, while Seonu grabs his leg and asks him if he will spare his life. He asks the student if she has some kind of prison in the basement, and she reveals that they repurposed a D-rank dungeon called the Rat's Labyrinth and made it into a prison, and millions of man-eating rats spawn down there. If the hunter's stamina is at least C+, they can withstand the attacks but will feel the pain regardless. Moreover, if the hunter is unable to escape, they will forever be met with endless suffering. And he asks her to lock Seonu up for about 30 days. He tries to resist, but Muryoung hits him on the ground and says she should follow her teacher's orders. After that, he finds a ring on the floor and uses the status scan skill to check its stats. It is a Usurian's ring, with grade St+, and it also shows the name Faker F111, and he remembers the same thing from back at the auction. He thinks it is time to make the Aries leader pay for messing with him, and he tells his student that he is leaving now. But she stops him and says he was supposed to lead her, and Hyonu wonders what she is talking about. She tries to resist, but he rudely asks her not to repeat himself and says they will talk about it later. He states that he needs to go and destroy the Aries guild, and leaves from there. After that, she calls her hunters and orders them that if they find any Aries guild members in their area, they have to kill them all. After that, he goes to Av's room and shows her the ring, and she reveals that it is not an artifact. It is revealed that the artifacts are treasures from different layers that are ranked by the system based on various elements such as their legacy and culture. The system gives them skills and customizations, then puts them in labyrinths, and this is how the artifacts are formed. Hyonu asks her what happened to those layers once they had their treasures taken from them, and she replies that she can't give her more details, but they were most likely destroyed. Climbers have to destroy the layers in order to continue climbing. The ring he found seems to be a well-crafted fake, and a climber probably created it. Hyonu thinks there might be a line between the Aries guild and the climbers. Last time, Av said that 2 climbers may currently exist in this layer, and he might find some clues about the climbers while he goes about his business with Aries. However, he calls her and asks her to clean her room, since it is too messy, and suddenly, he presses the button and disappears her game console. He says he will be holding onto it until his next visit, but she requests him to give it back, and she will be good and clean her room, but he doesn't listen to her. On the other side, at the Mighty Ruler Guild in China, a hunter secretly enters their territory at night. He has come there to rescue their 2 captive team members and to eliminate Seonu. Meanwhile, Muryoung appears there and says it looks like a rat snuck in, and asks him if he is another from Aries. Numbers 3 is shocked because he didn't sense her presence at all, and she rushes toward him to attack and asks him not to try to die too quickly. On the other side, when Hyoni comes back after comforting Av, number 1 and 2 are waiting for him, and one of them exclaims they have been waiting for him for so long. Hyonu suddenly remembers Suoyeok. By then, he remembers he said he was going to be late because of a film shoot day. He asks them what made them come here, and number 1 says he just came there to pay a friendly visit to him. Suddenly, Hyonu jumps from the window, and number 1 uses former S grade rank 8, Frost Knight, and throws it toward him. But Hyonu grabs it in its way and throws him back, saying he can get a taste of his own. But number 1 appears from behind, grabs the knife from him, and hits him with his full might. They use another artifact, Sonic Spear, of grade SST+, and the number 1 uses Mage Hunter and Sorcerer and attacks him together. He is impressed that Hyonu is still smiling in the current situation, and Hyonu carelessly asks him if they expect him to beg for his life. They then rush to attack him together, saying they will see how long they can act tough, and Hyonu thinks they are definitely faster than the guys before. However, he is still faster than them, dodging their attack perfectly and successfully damaging their attack. but they immediately reacted and were ready to attack him again, and Hyonu thought they were not going to defeat him easily, so he should try another method. Suddenly, he disappeared in front of them, and after a while, he appeared from behind and smashed his head and said it was called instant movement. It is a skill in which the user can move very quickly in a single moment, but he holds himself soon and asks him if he really thinks he is unprepared. Hyoni thinks he used his magic too fast, and now his magic channels are all aching, while there is a guy firing magic spears at him to limit his movements. Meanwhile, the other guy charges in to stop him from getting close to his buddy, and he admits that their teamwork is impressive. His instant movement skill isn't quite finished, and he needs to buy time. The number 2 wonders why he is so relaxed. He plans to stab him this time and finish all this fighting, and there is so much dust because of his attack. After that, they wonder if they have taken him, but Hyonu grabs one of them from behind and says he has got him now. He asks him if he wants to know something exciting and reveals that his stamina rank is S++. He then throws him to the ground forcefully and says he will get a treat from him now. After that, when Seoyeok comes back home, he is shocked to see that his house got destroyed overnight, and Hyonu exclaims it was not his fault. He was trying to get his head around just how long it was going to take to clean up this mess. Meanwhile, Seoyin comes there, and she is also shocked to see the mess. Seoyeok asks if she has come there just to laugh in his face. She assures him that he will receive compensation from the government and the Korean Hunter Association, and she also shows him CCTV footage in which Hyonu is fighting with the murderers. The apartment exploded due to their fighting, and she says it looks like people haven't reacted badly to it. He asks her if she remembers when Hyonu dumped all of his reporters on her, and now his phone is again bombarded with messages. It has been a month since he changed his number, and now he has to change it again, and he asks Hyonu to try and empathize with him there. He leaves by saying he is going to Soyeon's guild for now and will come back when everything is sorted out. He throws the ring toward him, and Soyeok is shocked to see Instant Plus artifact. He suddenly gets happy and asks Hyonu to let him know if he needs him. Later, he reaches the Aren Guild and reads news related to Martin Brand, the Ares leader. Earlier, he beat number 1 a little, and he spilled everything about him. He discovered that the guy who sent those guys after him was Martin Brand, who was hiding in a secret bunker. He recorded his voice where he revealed that the guy who ordered them to assassinate him was Martin Brand. Meanwhile, Anya calls him and says she has finished drawing it and is in a bad condition due to overwork. He asks her to set the destination of the Ares Guild head office entrance, throws his cell phone toward her, and asks her to give it to Seoyin. He then uses the magic circle and reaches a dark underground basement, and he wonders if Anya betrayed him. But Martin calls him from behind and says it's so nice to meet him, and he has been waiting for him for so long. Hyonu says he knows that he sent multiple assassins to kill him, but now they are all dead, while he exclaims that those guys were nothing but bait, and his main priority was to find out who he is. He wanted to find out whether he was the 9th layer's guardian or not, and Hyonu was shocked to hear those words from him. He uses the status scan technique to check his stats, but it shows nothing, which means he is a climber. He knew something was off, but he never thought the Ares guild leader would be a climber, and exclaims he is lucky because he can get rid of all his annoying problems simultaneously. Martin exclaims he is saying what he expected from someone who has already defeated 2 climbers, and asks him if he knows why he changed his destination and brought him to this place. He reveals that this place is a trap for him, and Hyonu rushes to attack him, thanking it is so nice to him to share with him such information. He tries to punch him, but he may use some kind of barrier, and he is unable to reach him. He then merely swings his hand and pushes him back at a distance. Hyonu is shocked to feel so much power. He then sees upward and is astonished that the roof is filled with a large number of artifacts, and Marshall formally introduces himself. He is the one who explores the boundaries of logic and seeks the essential. To the weak, he is a god who provides them spiritual treasures. To the strong, he is a terrifying existence that makes them kneel. To some, he is the guardian who granted them newfound strength, but to others, he is an amoral destroyer. This is why he is called the Faker. With this, he throws an artifact toward him while he tries to dodge it. Every time he tries to reach him, the weapons stop him from getting close, and Hyonu thinks he needs to use an instant movement. But he is using the barrier surrounding him so that low-level attacks would be a waste of time. So, he will have to go all in from the start, and thinks he should use Asura's Flare Blast. But that would take too long. So, he tries to use the best he can do right now and says they will see if he can deal with this. He uses the skill of the Supreme Emperor's Divine Wrath to kick him, and Martin is shocked to see that his barrier cracks with it. He tries to use it one more time, but this time, he grabs his leg and says he is impressed because that is a decent amount of magic output in just a few seconds. With this, he punches him in the stomach and makes him fall to a distance. Hyonu cannot feel his magic, and Martin says it is useless because this area is currently under an anti-magic effect. He has been watching him for a long time, and all along, he has been searching for the guardian of this layer. He reveals that he was able to analyze him during his fight with the Order, and as a result, he found out something important. Most of his skills involve magic, which is why he made this barrier. Hyonu interrupts him and asks him to shut up, and Martin asks him if he understands the situation he is in, and that he can't use any of his skills anymore. Hyonu says the situation is the same because he also can't use his magic. He replies that he is unable to use magic, but he can use his artifacts, and throws them all toward him, while Hyonu runs to save himself and thinks he can't even use instant movement. One of the artifacts hits him on the shoulder, and Martin asks him not to try to resist him using only brute force. All of his artifacts are at least S+ grade, and Hyonu wonders what he should do because he can't even see a way out. Suddenly, he hides in a place, and Martin thinks he must be using something to create this anti-magic effect. After a while, he jumps in front of him and thinks he still can break through it. He then jumps on a point and gathers his force to pull one of his attacks. He remembers reading something cool this morning. Now, he can't use his magic, but he will give that a shot and use the technique of Holy Thunder Strike to attack him through the barrier. It worked this time, and Martin was shocked to see so much power, but he used his arm to dodge his attack. Hyonu jumps backward, while Martin exclaims he continues to impress him and manages to smash his barrier without using any magic. He says he will have to show him the same respect by demonstrating his own techniques. He takes out the warrior Asukuran's sacred sword and asks him if he knows what makes this sword so great. The quality of this sword is that it can borrow skills from other weapons, and it was forged in the spirit of a famous myth. If he were to harness that, then it could be used in the following way, and Hyonu would use his status scan technique to check its skills. The skills of the sword are Boost, Super Boost, and many more. He then reaches him using the sword, and Hyonu thinks he can see his movements, but his body can't react fast enough. Martin pushes him away, and he is unable to block him, while at the same time, he uses another weapon, the ice attribute weapon, Aragan's Iron Mace. Hyonu gets seriously injured, and he is attacking him with multiple weapons. After his last attack, he wonders if it is the last weapon and if it is the one that he has not copied. Martin lifts his last weapon, the earth-shattering blade, Gigantomachia, and bids farewell to him. Hyonu tries to stop this but fails, and there is a sudden explosion there. When the dust is removed, Martin is surprised that he is still alive, while Hyonu seems to be in a very bad condition, so much so that even his shirt has torn away. He calls Martin and says he wants to tell him something, and he replies he should ask him anything because he doesn't have much time left. He asks him why he is trying to kill him, and he replies that killing the Guardian makes it much easier to lay waste to this layer. He also asks him why they are trying to climb the tower, and he replies that they do this so they can earn a seat. Hyonu asks him about the seat, but he refuses by saying he has heard enough and he shouldn't drag this out any longer. Hyonu thinks his S+ artifacts leave heavy wounds on him, but he is smiling in this state, and Martin thinks he is out of his mind since his death is so close to him. Hyonu asks him if he really thinks he is buying time for no reason, and since he has taken advantage of his overpowered items, he will use all of his power. He gathers his power, and Martin wonders if he is using magic, but the anti-magic effect is still in place. Hyonu thanked him for explaining how he fights and for the information. Suddenly, there is a flash of light, and he reaches Av's room, but he is still very injured. Av comes to help him, and he presses the button after thinking about someplace. On the other side, Martin can't find his location and thinks he needs to kill him while he is still weakened. Suddenly, he sees a magic thread there, and it is stated that the teleportation is the jump from one marker to another, and the magic thread is what connects the two locations. But the magic thread is supposed to disappear once the user has teleported away. This means that he is still hiding somewhere there. He thinks this is something undetectable to most people, but not to him. The next time he sees him, he will surely kill him. Meanwhile, Hyonu turns the room into the first floor of the tutorial tower, and she has treated the severe wounds with magic. But he is still in critical condition. She thinks it would be great if she had some potions of recovery artifacts, and the climber this time can copy artifacts and even negate magic. Hyonu can only stay there for another 20 minutes, and after a while, he states that he is done with his training. Av asks him what he means by training, and asks him to create a strategy before he goes. But he pats her head and says he doesn't need any strategy and this time will be different. He then returns to the dungeon where Martin is, and he welcomes him back. Hyunwoo smiles and says it is so funny to see him standing there, and that this place will soon become his grave. Martin rushes to attack him first, and Hyunwoo thinks he perfected countless martial arts styles in the tower. Most of them were fantasy creations from novels, but his last training session wasn't precisely martial arts. The blossoming tree experience. It was a type of philosophy called principles in martial arts novels. But in the end, he gave up on his training before mastering this one skill. Even though he had many teachers in his imagination, he had no one to answer his questions. However, he realizes something while he is training for 6 hours in the system room. The years he spent following the description from books, and all that he learned from fighting Chinman and the Spectral Queen, two very different foes, had enabled him to finally understand that the principles behind the blossoming tree is experience. This time he blocks his attack and uses a large amount of force to hold him back. Martin is shocked and wonders what happened to him, since his appearance remains the same and is still injured. How can he turn into a strong opponent? He wanted to enjoy killing him slowly, but that is now out of the question and decided to finish him off quickly. He uses his spears and rushes to attack him again, but he grabs the sword with his bare hands and punches him back using the Supreme Emperor's wrath. He then reaches him, punches him again, and tries to land his last attacks, but Martin gets up and pushes him back. He gets up and, this time, uses another artifact with SST plus rank. This weapon has the ability to absorb all the other weapons' skills, and he exclaims Hyunwoo won't be able to stop this. Hyunwoo laughs at him and asks him if he is 8 years old, and Martin comes forward to attack thinking this ability is a real strain on his body. But he grabs his sword with one hand, and Martin thinks he has used some kind of magic. Hyunwoo reaches him and exclaims he has used his own power and punches him with his full might. He uses the blossoming tree experience, first form, and strikes him forcefully. Martin is still in shock and thinks this is not possible, but there is a sudden explosion, and with this, he has defeated another climber, the founder of Ares. The notification appears there saying he found and defeated the hidden climber, and the status scan skill is currently at mid-rank. Martin's body disappears, and there is a bag still left on the ground, so he picks it up and checks its stats. Its skill is subspaces, and it opens, and a notification appears asking him to select the item as he wishes to store in the subspace. He stores the Giganto, the earth-shattering blade, and its strength is St+. It has the capacity to golf 15 items, and Hyunwoo thinks it is cheap since it should have the capacity of unlimited artifacts. However, he thinks to go back, but he doesn't have a phone and has no idea where he is. Meanwhile, someone opens the door behind him, calls him by the name of the guild leader, and tells him about his schedule. He is number 6 from the orders and is shocked to see Hyunwoo there, but he takes him down in just one blow. He grabs his face and says he is a little tired, so they should keep it as short as possible. First, he asks for his clothes and his phone. 3 days later, at the Hunters Association, Korea branch, the reporters have been called by Hyunwoo, and they think he is going to reveal who was behind the surprise attack at Hunter Seoyok's apartment. After a while, he reaches there and states that he is just there to give his statement today and won't be taking questions. He shows them the pictures of the order members and says they tracked him all the way to Seoyok's apartment, and he knows who was behind it all. He plays the recording, and everyone hears that the person behind it is Martin Brand. He says some of them will think the recording is fake, but this was also captured on CCTV, and there is a lot of other evidence to support this as well. He hopes that Ares will come forward with an explanation as soon as possible, and he can't wait to hear what they have to say. 3 days later in the Ganadong district, the reporters asked him about Hyunwoo since he had been declared missing. This latest news has shocked netizens across the country. Inside, he tells his friend about the vast tower and that the earth is the 9th layer. Seok says it's not that he doesn't believe him, but it's quite hard to accept, and Seoyin feels the same way. Hyunwoo smiles and says there is no need to overthink it, and Seoyok thinks he already knew it would be like this. He wonders why someone with such a terrible personality like him was going around and stopping the rifts, while Hyunwoo asks him to watch his mouth. Seoyin asks him if he went to Ares this time to stop a climber, and they are shocked when he tells them that the Ares guild leader turned out to be a climber, so he is able to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. He then decides to go outside and have a word with the reporters, and Seoyok says he can go for him because he is still injured, but he asks him not to worry because he is all fine now. He then comes outside, where he has to talk to reporters, but he also gets shocked to see Muryoung there, and she bows before him to pay her respects. She reveals that she has come to pick him up, and Hyunwoo thinks at least she shouldn't be there. After a while, Seok, Seoyin, and Seoyak are shocked to see the mighty ruler guild's leaders bowing before Hyonu and calling him her teacher. Hyonu asks her why she brought these people, and she replies that his humble student has brought along some bodyguards to protect him. Hyonu says they are so annoying and orders her to get rid of them, and Seok asks her if she is Supreme Dragon by any chance. She nods her head, and Hyonu is shocked when they tell him that she is 5th in the global rankings. She thinks back then that he was just playing around with different concepts. So, apart from Impero's law, he didn't teach her anything useful and wondered how she became so strong. Suddenly, she bows before him, apologizes to him, and says his unworthy student was unable to follow the path he set out, and starts crying, calling herself unworthy. Hayani gets up and smacks her head, asks her to keep quiet, and forbids her not to repeat himself. Seoyak calls him from behind and tries to say something by calling her name, Muriel, but she glares at him furiously and asks him not to use the name her teachers have given to her so lightly. Seoyak and Seok leave the room, and Hyonu asks her not to go around telling everyone that she trained under him. Seoyak is still in shock and asks him if the 5th ranked hunter in the world is his student. Hyonu says the reporters are still being so noisy, and Muriel asks him for permission to take care of them for him. She calls her men and orders them to go and kill everyone outside immediately, but Hyonu forbids her from doing so. Meanwhile, he receives a message and states that he is going to head over to Seongni because the Aries have finally responded. He then goes to see a man and says he came there because he heard that he could speak directly with the top dog. He asks him what he has to say for himself. He is the Aries Guild deputy leader, a coward, and Hyonu wonders why he has to clean up the missing guild leader's mess. There was also a sheet of paper he held up at the press conference, and number 6 and the guild leader both disappeared at the same time. This means that he could have taken out the guild leader, and he is not someone Hyonu can take on. However, this incident is making a lot of people nervous within the guild, and he needs to deal with this quickly, and the deputy leader asks him what he wants from them. Moreover, they will do their best to fulfill his request, and Hyonu asks them to hand over all of their dungeon rights to him and withdraw from Korea. He gets shocked and says it is a completely unreasonable thing to ask for, but Hyonu blackmails him, saying if he spills any more of his secrets, it's over for them. He smiles and says seeing they have worked so hard to get those dungeons, he will them off with 40%, and asks him to give him 40% of all of them. When he comes outside, Muriel is still there. She asks him if everything went okay, and he exclaims he doesn't want to see her guards. Suddenly, she forwards his hand and then pulls it back. Hyonu asks her what she is doing, but she changes the topic. She then looked backward, where the deputy leader seemed worried. She had some kind of artifact in her hand and crushed it. The same night, her men capture him and are beating him well while he is begging them to leave him. One of them exclaims he is just a weakling, and the deputy asks them why the Pado Guild leader's personal unit is after him. They reply him that he brought this upon himself, but he tries to say that he didn't do something, but they don't give him a chance and attack him. After that, they warn him, saying they don't care what he does, but if he angers her once more, they will look for him and find him no matter where he is hiding. On the other side, Hyonu goes to see Av, and she shouts at him because she is very cold because of him, and he says she should have called him. She replied that there was a restriction in place that once the guardian had entered the system room, she couldn't call them again for 5 days. He asks her if any of his skills leveled up this time, and she asks him to open his status window. He finds out that his speed has increased, but he doesn't receive a notification. Av tells him that his check attitude skill has also been upgraded. Before, it only displayed basic information, and now it should be easier to understand. Hyonu excitedly asks her if there is another change taking place, but she replies that for other upgrades, he needs to reach mid-rank. He is disappointed because, at this rate, it will take a long time to reach a high rank. Av states that there is also a chance that climbers will have the answer to his questions, and reveals that there are some individuals who are known as reclimbers, and they are climbers who have already reached the top but have then decided to start climbing again from the lowest layer. He remembers what Martin said, that they did this so that they could earn a seat, but he doesn't know what that means, and if he ever runs into a reclimber, he will get all the information he can out of them. Suddenly, he gets up and says he is going back, but Av stops him and says he needs to make her a PlayStation before he goes. After that, Ryung takes him to Gyeonggi Province, Hanam City, and Hyonu asks her about that huge place. She humbly replies that she is building a residence for him, and he is shocked to see that building. Soyak also wonders if there was always a place like this in Hanam City. He is surprised to find out that she is building a new city for her teacher, and Hyunwoo asks her how much money she spent on this. Ryung replies it's nothing compared to what he has given her. He is still confused about why she is being so nice to him. She doesn't seem to have any interior motives, and he thinks she is maybe hiding her attitude. He uses his status scan skill to check her attitude, which is completely devoted to Hyunwoo Kim. Suddenly, he asks her if she is a pervert, and his question makes both of them shocked, and Seoyeok shouts at him about how he can ask something like that to a minor. When they go inside, he asks her if she doesn't want to go to China, and she sadly asks him if she is making him uncomfortable. She humbly tells him that she belongs by his side, and Hyunwoo asks her to go now, and she doesn't need to hang around him all the time. At the same time, Seoyeok entered the room and asked him if he had said anything to her because she was giggling to herself and saying something about him being so considerate to her. Hyunwoo asks him to ignore her, and Seoyeok asks him when he will go to the US because he saw on the news that the International Hunters Association has summoned him. Hyunwoo is surprised and wonders what they want from him all of a sudden, and he replies that they probably want to evaluate him for the S-grade global rankings. Hyunwoo asks him to remember that he said they would pay him just for signing up,